3, 2, 1.
Live from the Rob Christensen Radio Network satellite studio, it's Jim and Rob overanalyze the movies. Hey everybody, it's me, Rob, just waiting for my co-host Jim, and welcome to Jim and Rob Overanalyze the Movies. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at Strange Brew. And how did I put the basic premise for this nonsense? Yes. Two beer-drinking, donut-eating Canadian hillbilly stereotypes get jobs at a local brewery and stumble into a plot to not only take over the brewery, but the world. Anyway, folks, there's the short version of what we're looking at tonight. And I want to say, first of all, thanks to everyone who's here. And we've got a few folks have been invited. And we're looking forward to a really good show. Part of what we're going to be doing tonight is not so much, or as much as we're going to overanalyze Strange Brew, what we're really going to do is take a, what's the word I'm looking for? We're gonna see, does it hold up? This is something that came out in 1983. Does this thing hold up at all? Before I move on with the rest of the programming, what I'll do is I actually this time prepared an honest-to-goodness overview and an honest-to-goodness synopsis with the trailer and everything. I'm quite proud of this. So I'll be putting that up shortly, but first let's just say a quick hi to my co-host with the most, Mr. Jim Schlaboyko.
Take
Hello,
off,
sir.
eh?
Good day, eh? Good day, eh?
I was going, it's way too warm to wear a toque, otherwise I would have been right in there. But
I am, I'm with you. It was hard enough to do it for the promo. So Jim, why don't, before we get into anything, what I'll do is maybe set up our synopsis, the movie synopsis, and then we'll go from there. Does that work for you?
yeah, you bet.
Fantastic. All right. I'm quite proud of this. So, make it sound like I knew what I was doing.
Somewhere behind granite battlements, beyond impenetrable gates, indoors, something evil is brewing, and it isn't Elsinore beer.
Strange Brew begins with an appropriately absurd movie bit where Bob and Doug release a jar of moths to stop the screening of their own movie, which results in them giving away their dad's beer money to a couple of crying children. Of course, they still need to pick up a case of beer for their dad, so in a shout out to one of their earliest appearances on SCTV, they go to the beer store and try but this bottle has a mouse in it, I should get the beer free scam. This leads them to Elsinore Brewery and Pam Elsinore, Daddy's Princess and Brewery Air. And the Hamlet references continue. Pam Elsinore has come to the brewery to claim her inheritance and take management of the brewery from her uncle Claude, who had married Pam's mother right after the recent accidental death of her father. One of her first changes at the plant is to hire Bob and Doug, because she bought their mouse in the bottle story. She hands Bob and Doug over to employee Rosie LaRose, former hockey hero and possible concussion victim, and they get put to work in quality control. And just to hammer home the point that she isn't blessed with great powers of interpersonal observation, she totally misses Rosie's obvious crush on her. Meanwhile, Uncle Claude rushes off to Brewmeister Smith, who has Bond villain-level plans that go way beyond controlling Elsinore Brewery. With the stage set, this Scooby-Doo meets Hamlet action comedy really gets going when Pam, Bob, and Doug discover a possibly haunted video game in the abandoned staff cafeteria. Hijinks ensue.
The Brothers movie of old times. The Adventures of Bob and Doug McKenzie.
I'd like to thank the Academy.
That's it. We're leaving, kids. Come on.
Strange Brew.
You hoser, they wanted to see our movie, now they're mad at us.
Hey, Cop, it's only a preview, eh? I didn't want to show them the best part.
Okay, so that's our topic for today. So, good day.
Hey, you guys!
What?
Take up!
Good. That's slick.
I'm Jim, I don't know about you, but I was kind of blown away at how much I laughed watching this movie.
Yeah.
I like my expectations. I was actually much like yourself. I think I remember when you said, "Oh, yeah, I don't know if I'll like it though." I was really, that really got me worried. But yeah, I was like, even now it's, take off, eh?
Yeah.
Brings up all that nostalgia. Listen, before we get into the meat of it, Jim, did you have a chance? Do you want to give us kind of a bit of a history of SCTV and Bob and Doug?
Sure.
We do have a viewer, and now, mind you, this is probably the most on time we've ever started.
Yes.
But maybe give us a bit of a
Sure.
Give us a bit of a you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, I did a
history.
little prep here, so I'm sort of reading off the monitor. I'm not quite that level good to pretend that I'm not, but I'll just give you what I have here. So SCTV stands for Second City Television, and I'm going to tell this for people who may not be from Canada. It was a television show about a fictional TV station based in the city of Melonville, which doesn't really exist. Ostensibly, it was a sketch comedy program, and it followed the programming day of the station, both behind the scenes, and it showed the programs that aired as well. There was an aspect of SCTV that was sort of about how the sausage got made and watching all that. So there was staff conflicts, arguments over the cost of things like crane shots, the host of the fishing show being allergic to fish, and then various characters getting either demoted, kidnapped, or promoted. Johnny LaRue, Guy Caballero, Edith Prickley, Bobby Bittman, Skip Bittman, Sammy Maudlin, the list kind of goes on.
Jerry Todd. The Great White North itself, so the Bob and Doug part of it, premiered on SCTV back in September 1980, and it only really ran for about 2 years. There were altogether, somebody actually counted, there were 41 segments, and that eventually led to a best-selling album, which led to the movie. Yeah. And then there was a bunch of stuff afterwards, commercials, similar parts in the Disney animated movie Brother Bear and its sequel, a few other things like that. But it had all started out as a big middle finger of sorts to the host station in Canada here, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Their shows, because we fit less commercials in, their shows were 2 minutes longer. So the CBC specifically requested for there to be Canadian content put into those 2 minutes. And the guys, the whole writing team thought it was ridiculous. It was filmed at the time in Alberta, I believe they said, by mostly Canadians with mostly a Canadian crew. They couldn't get much more Canadian than that. So what they did was they just money, right? Like it was some doctor who got into broadcasting who brought them up from LA.
Yeah, well,
and
I remember that from the extended DVD set. They talked about having a benefactor as well, but Dave Thomas, who plays Doug, and Rick Moranis, who plays Bob, they would shoot these really quickie segments, and they would do them 5 or 6 at a time, and they would keep only the best ones. So there's by the way, a lot of lost or forgotten Great White North episodes out there, and they would set up with a really stripped down crew at the end of the day, and they'd have beers, and they would totally ad-lib everything, and then just kept what they thought was funny. So they talked specifically about Canadian things like beer, bacon, snow chains, snowshoes, the Canadarm, all just to satisfy the CBC. And eventually, this sort of thing that they did half-assed, it became, and I know speaking personally, it became the most popular segment of the show at the time. Dave and Rick eventually left SCTV to film the movie, and it seems like there was some sort of internal tension over the ownership of the McKenzie brothers from sources. I even have the Second City book by Donna McCrohan here that was in my personal collection. But of course, people still talk about them to this day, despite the fact that they had a fairly limited run time-wise. But yeah, so that's that.
I've got here, Jim, actually, I queued up, like, as Walter said, and hello, Walter.
Oh, hey, Walter.
As Walter said, it was there was like kind of a beef about CanCon, and my understanding of the lore, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, if someone in your research said, it was almost like one of the producers saying, well, do you want me to just put a couple of hosers, a case of beer, and some back bacon sandwiches? That do you for your Canadian content? It was, and I'm adding a little hyperbole and editing it, but that is my understanding. But you can certainly see, Jim, anything you heard, you're absolutely right, Jamie. We are handsome AF. This
guy's a honey dripper.
Yeah, he is. But
as they used to say.
Yeah. So I actually queued up. I found a selection on YouTube, and we'll get to the point where you can see that resentment here. Well, just a sec here. Right in this Chiron they did.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember. I even remember the font. That's the weird thing.
Like right out of a machine, like a Jerry Todd machine.
Yeah. You know? Just the slow crawl, and they're still talking behind it, and it was always those things that you would sort of listen to the end for, and
have signed CRTC affidavit saying they drink beer, eat back bacon, drive snowmobiles, and wear toques. Any resemblance, like just you can almost hear the resentment within this. Yeah. And it goes on forever. I'm really quite impressed, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Did you think, Jim, or did you catch in there, like in any of the shtick that, or any of the research that you saw? Sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once. I should stop that. Any of the research that you found where you're like, did they have any idea how the Bob and Doug thing would take off?
No, I think they
witty wordplay there.
There you go. No, I think they just thought it was a Castaway too. So many of these things that get huge success, they start out this way, almost accidentally. It's like, we're mostly concentrating on this thing. We'll go do that there. I'll just cite. How can I do this there? The Second City book here, and
you did do your research. No screwing around.
Well, it's one of these books that I've wanted that I've had like to read it. Now I actually started to read it for research purposes. I was thinking, this is pretty good. I should have. I've had it for like 25 years. I don't know where I even originally got it, but anyway, I think they just thought it was a throwaway thing, and there was also a little note in this about the production at the time. So that's 1980 to the show going from 1980 to about 1983 at that point. They would have really cheap segments, like all the Sunrise semester segments, and then they would have more expensive ones. And the fascinating thing, like you and I always joke about the Guy Caballero fighting Johnny LaRue about the costs of the crane shots in Polynesian
Which
Town,
is still
right?
some of my favorite. Yep.
That's actually from their real life. Like they had the producers were worried about, he goes, we did this one production of Polynesian Town. We had to light 3 city blocks and it was at night and it was like this huge thing. And we just got all these notes from management, like we're going to have to sort of tamp it down or we're going to have to balance it out with some cheaper things like Great White North, like Sunrise Semester, the 1-2, like the 2-handers or the one hand, the individual just doing a lecture and sort of ad-libbing with a chalkboard. And so there was that sort of economic struggle as well when they're putting it out. And it sort of makes you really appreciate the show all that much more. I I work with some people that are that have good, comedic taste. They're relatively younger than me, and I have to point them where to watch because they may not have the collection of DVDs or whatever, or Blu-rays or whatever. And only recently did SCTV sort of pump up its YouTube channel. So there's an official SCTV YouTube channel. It sort of makes you appreciate the whole thing a little bit more. It was huge for us. You and I and. I remember there was a couple of quotes in the movie.
Call, like when we're a couple of quotes in the movie. Yep.
Well, there's a couple of quotes in the movie, and I remember our late great friend Rod Peters were saying, "Oh, the brakes are gone, eh? No point in steering." And he would always that and Judas Priest breaking the law whenever he sort of rolled through a stop sign. But so there was that, and was there another one too? There's a couple lines in there that I remember quoting, but that no point in steering thing was a big one with us, especially since Rod was the one with the license at first. But anyway, it's hugely influential, and I still talk about it, and I still watch them, and they're still funny to me. So yeah, I'm probably not very what's the word? Yeah, I'm probably a little as a critic. I'm maybe not doing my full job here.
Well, then you know what? Before we get into the meat of it, let's first of all let's say hi to everyone that currently are watching and chatting. Again, we can't have enough of Jamie talking about how handsome AF we are. So, but first, Walter, thanks so much for making it tonight. And you're bang on right. Like
BC representing.
Walter, I'm assuming like you're of a similar vintage to Jim and I. So is this bringing up memories and nostalgia for you? I'd be interested to know. Jelly Duck, good to see you, Ahmed.
We're as warm as you are.
Yeah.
It's 32 degrees here.
Yeah. That's Celsius. Well, plus the Humidex. So what is it? Yeah. Probably one of those feels like 35 kind of things. What's the temperature in Kuwait right now, Ahmed? This is good. A Poppy family on us, Canucks.
There you go.
Poppy family. What is... I can't think of the reference. You're going to have to explain that one, Walter. And thank you very much, Ahmed. Couldn't have done it without you. Jelly donut. Donuts. Beauty.
They got like 10 tables and like 3 spots.
Okay, so like I said earlier, and I'm wondering, my goodness, what is that in centigrade, Ahmed? 110 degrees Fahrenheit in Kuwait right now. And what is that, like 7? It's got to be 7, 8 in the morning.
Fahrenheit in Celsius. 43.3. He wins.
Yeah. And it's like 7, 8 a.m. right now.
Oh, my God. Who would have thunk it that the Middle East would be warmer than Canada in mid-June or end of June?
Exactly. Who, Jim? Who? So now let me ask you. Let's get into it now. What was your first reaction once you actually once you watched the movie? What was your first reaction?
Well, once we started to get into it,
Walter, that is kind of awesome. Did you catch this, Jim? Sorry to interrupt. I don't mean to take you off track, but count.
No.
Deep cut.
Ooh, scary. That was another one. Was one of the cheap ones was Monster Chiller Horror Theater.
143, Jim, and 6 a.m.
Oh, jeez. That's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so what your initial reaction?
Yeah, I mean,
watching it, what's the thinking?
So I sort of dug the meta thing that they were doing about showing a movie and talking about making movies and that whole sort of the movie within the movie thing initially. And I totally there's tons here, and this is kind of a neat exercise for this. There are tons here that I had totally forgotten about or not appreciated at the time. So that little part was fun, and it was absolutely SCTV. Like, they could be smart and dumb at the same time. So they could be referring to making movies, and oh, by the way, here's all the little things in between, and then the second thing that sort of occurred to me was the sort of the cheap production values. But after a while, you sort of get used to that, and you just sort of. The thing about watching old movies, and I've been doing older movies, and I've been doing this a little bit lately over the last couple of years, is that they're in a way they're historical. Well, of course, they're historical documents, right? So there's always buildings that have been torn down that aren't or stars that have passed on, or people at a certain point in their careers, and it's fun to watch for those reasons. So that was the two things was. There was a couple of smart jokes at the start that I thought were kind of fun, and just how this whole Strange Brew thing is really carried by the charm of Rick Moranis and Bob.
Absolutely.
And sorry, Dave Thomas, rather than Bob Thomas.
Well, and did you notice, not did you notice? Was it just me, or one of the things I was worried about was, does it hold up? But first, one sec. Kaiser 886, ahoy, sir. Welcome to our show. Welcome to the chat. And I'm assuming you're talking about how hot it is in Kuwait right now. And yes, that is really deadly.
Yeah.
And Walter, your friends back in the day obviously had no television taste. They should have totally picked up that play. Did you find what I was fascinated by was this weird mix of nostalgia for the yellow Toronto police cars. That's right.
Was that a thing?
That was a thing. Toronto had yellow cop cars. And it's I'll be damned. But even when they went to the beer store, and it was that very much that old school liquor control thing that the provinces all had, where you went up, you asked for what you wanted, and they were we'll get it for you. And somebody that rattling it down the almost like that rattly conveyor belt thing, and I was like, wow. But also, I how absurd it could be, and you really saw that. And what I think is what allows it to hold up now. Not to say that there aren't some problematic parts, but why it still holds up is just it's so absurd. You're not looking at pithy one-liners referencing pop culture of the time. And they did some meta stuff, and they certainly, and especially in SCD, love to make fun of, just local television. But I think you wouldn't take much to kind of go, oh, that's YouTube, like you and I. We could have been inspirations for subjects if they all that's all they'd have to do is just kind of, oh, wait a sec, look at these two doofuses. Yeah, we could have some fun with this, and which I thought was really kind of cool. Was there anything, let me ask you this, Jim, anything you found, oh, that hasn't aged well at all. That's a little yikes.
Well, the special effects, there's a few little there's the ghost of the father when he comes back, a la Hamlet, and he sort of makes an appearance. And there's that little sort of Tinkerbell sort of streak of light that goes through the cafeteria there, and it actually sort of remind me of
the haunting, the
little
ghost,
like the Disney rotoscoping that they used to do in the 40s. It sort of had that sort of vibe, but the lasers look pretty cheap, and but special effects. It was a $5 million movie in 1983, or 1984, 83, yeah.
What do you think, though? Some of that was, oh, look at this. We're getting compliments. We're getting props. Yes, we have Muzak now.
Yes. It sounds like
Thank
Elliot
you very
Smith.
much, sir. Kaiser. We do appreciate that. And yeah, Walter, Jerry Todd is my spirit animal.
We actually, Walter, we make frequent Jerry Todd jokes.
I dream of bringing the level of production to video that Jerry Todd did. But
Just put that super there.
there was one thing that was like kind of, oh, you couldn't do that now, was the whole, so for those folks who haven't seen the movie, and we're in a spoiler zone, you'll just have to accept it. The brewery's right next to an insane asylum where they are in a weird kind of...
The Royal Canadian Hospital for the Criminally Insane.
Criminally insane.
So it's got royal designation.
The Royal Canadian Institute.
So So the Queen came and designated it. There's a whole procedure there. Well,
Yeah, as we know, as I was involved in a tour for that in a previous working life. Yes, but when they put the mental health patients through it, and even now, like I'm not talking. Whoops. Yikes. Oh, well, technical difficulties, but I will continue to talk while I put Jim on.
It's just
my Jerry Todd moment.
Yeah, no kidding. We'll just put that super up. There we go. Oops, sorry, wrong one. there was a skit where it says sale ends Tuesday, and he goes, "Oh, that's the wrong one. Let's bring that down." And then they had all the 6 disembodied heads singing in unison, "Jerry Todd." That's sort of the level that we want to achieve.
Exactly. Thank you. We'll probably commission that on Fiverr.
Yeah.
No, we could. There's no way. You see those the mental health patients running down a thing, and it's very stereotypical, and it's like, I don't see that happening now. But for a movie that's 37 years old, that is the only moment is, I think, kind of amazing. I suspect if we keep this does it hold up thing once a month, if we keep doing this, Jim, we're gonna run into some movies we loved where it's that's awful.
There was a scene, just to echo that, there was a scene fairly early on when Pam Elsinore is stuck on the gates of Elsinore Brewery have closed in on her car, and there's a worry that she'll be electrocuted, and Bob and Doug happen upon her when they're trying to return their mouse beer bottle.
Let's see if I can't find it.
And he actually says to her, and this is I sort of even hesitate bringing this up because it's kind of crude, but he says about her, to one of them says to the other, you'll have to ram her from behind, and there's not a scintilla of sort of douchiness about that joke.
You're right.
None. And there's some urine jokes and fart jokes and burping and that sort of thing, and it's maybe the least sexual movie I think I've ever seen. I don't know. Which is not a bad thing, but that line in particular, I was waiting for like some kind of gross shoe to drop, and it didn't. It was.
I think I'll bring it up. I'm pulling it up on screen right now, Jim.
It was kind of an innocent. I guess that's what they're kind of innocents, and that's innocence. TS, and that sort of just reinforced that.
Let me take the. Even if they're like her Volkswagen Jetta or Golf.
And they've got
that CDN.
I think they're tied together or something there, but I don't know what the mechanics of that was. But
oops. Yeah, no, it's almost I look at that. Yeah, that's not. What's fascinating is that isn't the gag. Oh, yikes! Sorry, Matt. I'm not. That would have. Okay, technical difficulties. My bad. Jim had said, the gag was actually, Jim. tell Matt what he missed as far as the dialogue, which is why we're showing this clip.
It was just they were thinking that she would be electrocuted.
Nothing's funnier, Matt, than us explaining a joke.
Step by comprehensive step. Walter said there was no sound. Yeah. So basically, they just said to get her out of the, get her out of the fence. He said we're going to have to ram her from behind, and there was no sexual. Nowadays, you couldn't say something like that and have, there'd be some other line, right? They would capitalize on that joke, but there was nothing, and they just go about their thing, and it's like, oh, I'll pretend I'm a hitchhiker, eh? Like it was just, it was, and it just sort of reinforces the fact that these two guys are sort of innocents. I was actually reading a little bit. The source was a web, but they're supposed to be like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern type figures in this.
Well, and that's actually like one of the kind of taglines, and I didn't put it in the overview, like in the synopsis, but I really did think it's like, this is, but I wasn't thinking of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. I was thinking the two grave diggers. Although I guess they were wiser, but you have this comic, like in every Shakespeare play, there's the comic ones. It's like, hey, this is like if the two idiot grave diggers got involved in the story. And then all of a sudden Hamlet gets zany, but in the end, I was more like, no, this is Scooby-Doo meets Hamlet. But the other thing was the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern kind of comment it has something to it in that even as you watch this movie, they're so clueless. They're involved in the plot, but they aren't. They really have no, things just, and this is what's so impressive. Things happen to them. Like the real movie is actually, and it's Ms. Elsinore. Let's, I just want to get her back on the screen for a second here. So this woman, Pam Elsinore, played by Lynne Griffin, who, once I saw her, it was like, oh wait, that had a lot of great, solid character performer in a lot of great Canadian television of the 80s, 70s and 80s, and even into the 90s.
There's a number of them here.
But I think her character, Rosie, her uncle, Brewmeister, Ted, the Brewmeister, Max von Sydow's lackey, Ted. Yes. They were like active participants making things happen. And this was one of those where it's like, they're not even aware they're in the movie. They're not aware that they're in the story. Yeah. They have no clue. By the time it all ends and they get even better jobs, they're still like, like their own, they had like a sub adventure without any, and I really, I did that innocence, those babes in the woods, those, and
I think they carry it through. I mean, it's silly and everything. And some of the technology, like the haunted video game that divulges all the secrets. I'm still not entirely sure how that works. And or the so are the hockey playing armies, are they drugged, or are they drugged and it's the music is acting as a trigger, or it's both, or anyway?
I think they're drugged, and then the music is the way they're controlled. So the drugging, of the Elsinore beer, aspects, and then of course which is also like another very so Canadian without just putting 8,000 Canadian flags, although they had that there, but it's so Canadian because it's all organ music. Yeah. Because of course it's Canada. And, I really thought those gags, were really, really worked for me. What did you think of, there was, even in other parts, there was some really killer moments, like where the Bob and Doug, and this is where you saw their writing. And a whole movie that to me was like the Harold Ramis. if memory serves, I saw him or read an interview with him where he had said, yeah, sometimes like in a comedy, it's maybe not good filmmaking, but whenever you're, hey, this is what we should do to make it a good film, and this is what we should do to make it funny. In a comedy film, go for the funny. And you see that in here, but even like there's just the nonsense, like Claude, Uncle Claude, the usurper, the mother, the overly sexualized mother, and Pam, our Hamlet, and he's close like more bean medley, dear, because they're eating Kentucky Fried Chicken, and it's just totally like, yeah. There's a choice. There's like, this is just funny.
Yeah,
make them eat chicken.
I wonder, were they must have been doing product placement back then, wouldn't they have? Like, it's an obvious, and the other weird thing is, Max von Sydow's brewmaster Smith appears in court, and he's wearing one of those Colonel Sanders ties. Anyway, just a little detail.
Or not?
Well, is it a bolo or is it?
No, it's some other. Yeah,
that sort of antebellum loose knot. I don't even know what it is.
But I look at those, it's a great eye, but I look at those little moments and there was a lot. But back to your comment about product placement, they did certainly, like my understanding of the, reading some of the production notes, my research, a fair bit of Wikipedia, of course, but some other places, they were actually going to shoot in an actual like Molson Canadian was gonna give them like some. Oh, sorry about that. It just kind of dawned on me. I have music playing in the background. We can listen to it. They did have a deal with Molson, but once the whole mouse in the bottle thing came up,
right, I read that
Molson
too. Yeah.
pulled back, and so they had to do this whole Elsinore Brewery thing, and rented like a closed brewery. The other thing was Brewers Direct or Brewers Retail, because very much a regulated thing then and now, and they were going to do it there, and it was like, then Brewers Retail was like, well, we're not sure if your brand really meets ours. And they kind of backed out. So these guys actually made The Beer Store. Years later, what does Brewers Retail turn into? The Beer Store. Which is kind of a neat sort of way. Cool, which comes first here?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was like direct product placement. I honestly think half of it was just funny.
Yeah.
But they had like weird little moments, like the cop after talking to Claude because people have disappeared, and Pam has been hurt, and she's like in a catatonic state, and it's like Claude is showing off his knowledge of sculpture, and it's like Bonaparte as they walk by a sculpture of Napoleon Bonaparte, and so the cop's like, Bonaparte, Napoleon, actually. Just these weird little moments that were just so good,
Yeah. Yeah, I know. That's Paul Dooley, the character actor.
It's Uncle Claude.
Yeah, if he's American or Canadian, and I think his eyebrows and hair has been darkened even. Like I think he's more of a salt and pepper guy even back then. But and he actually carried a lot of the weight there as one of the baddies. Like everything was on him, and Max von Sydow was as an actor one-on-one was pretty, like he was grabbing him by the throat, and there's a few gags like the whole holding you up by the neck and you can see his feet dangle off the ground.
Yeah, that Darth Vader riff, like
it was
that
quite
little
physical.
But no, not by the neck, by the ear.
Yeah,
he was pulling his ear, like it was all that kind of absurd sort of, but they still had to have the cheap shot. Though, like there was moments, and I'm trying to find it actually, because of course they're it is. They're not just babes, and you know what? Let me see if I can't find it, Jim. Like if I even had my crap even more together.
Walter was just commenting that the mouse in the bottle, I think, was used on an old Bob and Doug segment. And
yes,
that
it was.
And they mentioned that in the movie, like somebody shouts at the screen, and when they're showing their movie, which I think is called Bob and Doug fight the 2051 mutants or something like that. It's after the Fourth World War, and it takes place in 2051. Oh, that was right. I remembered the sort of the funniest joke earlier on, but so somebody like an angry audience member says, I already saw this on the TV show, and they start throwing things at the screen. One of the funniest moments earlier on, I think one of the funniest moments in the movie was when they were shooting this science fiction movie, and they find a sort of a broken, or it's Rick Moranis by himself, and he's sort of like an Omega Man, and he's on the probably Toronto waterfront somewhere in amongst some rocks, and there's a cracked Statue of Liberty like souvenir thing, and he picks it up
out of the rocks. Yeah,
Statue of Liberty, eh? And then you hear Dave Thomas off screen saying, "More acting."
Well,
like, you damn dirty apes! Like, he wanted a moment like that, but anyway, act more. He said.
More
that was like, I saw that joke. That's about a minute and a half in. I think, oh, okay, I'm in. That's good.
Okay, so here's another these weird little, like the best way I can say, Jim, are like these weird little, and I thought it was meta, but it was actually, and I'm going to bring it up on screen. We won't be able to hear it, but it is a visual gag, so sorry in advance, folks. I'm not sure why I can't put sound from my desktop, but first you've got in the movie, like, I really just I was laughing my ass off with this moment here, and you kind of see there's Rick Moranis, and he's just doing that thing where he's just kind of looking like an idiot, you know, but all it could remind me of was who, Jim? Who here in the... Yeah, I just keep moving away from the mic. That's my bad. But Jim, who does this remind you of?
Like, right at that moment?
I'm a little shocked. What about you, Jelly Duck? All right, here it is.
Oh, okay.
Vince Clortho in... like when he's playing Vince Clortho, and all I could think was it's the same nonsense in the image. And this Ghostbusters was actually in 1984. It was after, but all these guys have worked together, and there's a part of me just wondering, did they look at that, Jim, and they're like, oh, we got to have that in there. Well, we can't really do it again because it'll just be a straight copy, but
yeah.
No.
Oh yeah, no, that's a good. I was thinking of Ghostbusters too in this, and Richard's in. I missed missing him. Yeah, that's a good point.
We're gonna put a pin on that right now, and we'll come back to that, Richard. Absolutely, Walter. Yeah.
The thing about oh yeah, that's right too. The thing about these movies is that they're held up. The charm.
Yes, he did.
Yes. The charm of the lead characters really do a lot of the heavy work.
Put a pin on this one too, Ahmed. We will come back to it. Sorry, say that again, Jim.
So the charm of the actors in both a movie like Ghostbusters, especially those sort of those bigger, or put a quote around the word bigger, but they do a lot of the heavy lifting. So whether it's Bill Murray in Ghostbusters or Dave Thomas and Rick Moranis here, a lot of it's driven. If they weren't as charming, you'd sort of wonder how the movie would do. The other thing that I was thinking of too is that watching a movie like this on your own, just sort of on your own computer or off your own TV, versus watching it in a movie theater. Remember those? Especially with comedies, especially with big, noisy comedies. That was always sort of a fun thing. I mean, I remember especially the summer comedies, the big summer comedies like Ghostbusters. You'd go in and it would be a sort of a rowdy time at the movie theater. Everyone would be laughing and really they'd be expecting to laugh too. And they both, I think, would play way better with an audience.
And you would, not
that it's a bad watch on its own.
I think and this is something for the non-Canadians in our audience right now. Harsh, man. Listen, it's hot here.
Jerry Todd.
And Jelly Duck's joining in. I think for our non-Canadian and are not even non-Canadian, like it's Canadians, you got to be in your 40s and older to have experienced what was briefly a Bob and Doug mania in the early 80s. Apparently it's Rob Zilla now. But there's that there was a mania. Everyone, good day, take off. It was our own weird. Would you agree with? I put this out to everyone. It was our Simpsons craze. Remember the first couple of seasons and it didn't, but it really was very much a Canadian kind of craze. And you hear it a bit in the trailer that I cut in the synopsis. But Geddy Lee on that Takeoff song, the 12 beers of, or the 12 Nights of Christmas, except it was all beer, back bacon, etc.
Yeah.
Everyone, the early 80s when people were still going to the theater, like as a large group, that you could be in a full, or maybe not a full theater, but a half full or more theater on a Friday night and experiencing having that experience where everyone in the experience, and you're right, Jim, going back to the trailer, they did this in the TV show. That was what anyone could have said that because everyone knew what was going on. You went to that movie in 1983. Fans. You were part of that whole thing. Come on, kids, we're going. I think that's something important to note. And so, and I think coming back to like Jim, how much of our enjoyment, and I put this out to the folks who were part of that or remember that craze, Walter, maybe one, Richard Lennon, Matt might be a little young for this, but that craze where how much of our entertainment was nostalgia?
Yeah, probably a good deal of it. Like, I think if I showed this to my kids, I have a couple of kids that are 22 and 19. And we often watch movies together. So we showed them Blazing Saddles a few years ago. They're like, holy! They were pretty alarmed by it. That might be one for the future there.
We may have to. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. I was talking to Frank. Like Frank. He was in our stream last week, but we were talking about that, and he's like, Blazing Saddles wouldn't. We were having this conversation, and I'm like, and he goes, watch it with your 18-year-old daughter and say it holds up. It's like, then of course I'm like, well, she just doesn't understand the context. But you're absolutely right. We should. And actually maybe that'd be an opportunity. I'm not sure, not necessarily Frank, but somebody else who might want to enjoy, speak to that also, just that very experience of, watch this with your kids.
Yeah. We watched The Jerk together, and oh, that Richard's a hoser, eh?
Take off.
But we watched The Jerk, Steve Martin's The Jerk from, I think it was 77 or 78. And
I remember seeing that in the theater.
Yeah, my mom took us, and with the there's a big blowjob joke in it, and it's just it's sort of like woo-hoo. It was one of those awkward kind of. I think I was
spicy.
Yeah,
and I was weird with my children here.
I was a preteen at that point, I think. And anyway, so we got in, and so I've watched it subsequently with my kids, and or I think just my daughter, and she thought it was funny. There was a couple, I can't remember what specific parts, but there was a couple of good parts that she quite liked. And so does it hold up for us? Well, it holds up for me. I'm not partial though. Like this is one of those things where I'm so invested in SCTV, I couldn't I couldn't really come out against it. There's some ridiculous parts of it. There's some parts that don't work, but I was still. It was still nice to watch sort of Rick and Dave at the height of their powers there, Bob and Doug, and but would it hold up for the younger generation? Well, hold up's not the right word, but in introducing it to them, would they still think it was as funny?
I think you'd almost have to. You maybe not start with the movie. You start with the television shows.
Yeah.
Want to? Maybe we could talk about this, Jim. I did. That is something. You're absolutely right, Richard, and that is something I noticed as well. And I kind of had a. You know what? I was kind of having a hard time getting my head around it. Now, part of it is, I think if you made it now, it'd be. Yeah, I don't know if you. I don't know what was Toronto like at that time.
Yeah,
you know what? And I don't think there was ever even a Native person on SCTV. I don't think there was any Indigenous, no, there wasn't.
Well, they sometimes they had a sequel to The Last of Mohicans called Mohicans Galore, but
dear Lord.
Walter,
there were that was part of the
differences.
problematic nature of the but that doesn't mean we're not gonna. It'll be just obviously a thing we'll talk about if we do decide to look at.
on the other hand, they have the Cleavon little "Let me whip this out" joke, which is still one of the funniest moments, I think.
Don't shoot or. And it's like I still think that's just genius. And well, you know what? We're
that's
getting
a whole
on a sidetrack. Let's go back to back to the movie we are looking at. And Richard's comment about no people of color, and he's absolutely right. Mm-hmm. And and I don't. Again, back to SCTV. Was there ever an Indigenous person? Well, you had the Mohicans gag, which I think now which were like in the television show, but it's not like they ever went anywhere near there.
No. There was it was an ensemble thing, so it's not like they introduced new characters. So if they, didn't have one, and this isn't defending it, but if they didn't have one at the time, actually, subsequently, so SCTV is a product of Second City. Second City is a reference to Chicago being the second city of the United States after New York, of course. And just recently, the head of, and I might have some of my
according to Chicago
right here. Yeah, the head of the Chicago chapter, if that's what it's called, of Second City. It's a whole institution down there. They've got classes and they've got performances and that kind of thing. And he stepped down, I think, largely because a few of the African-American comics who worked there said that they didn't really get their share. They didn't get their due. They came out with specific sort of allegations. And he just stepped down. So, that's a point.
Here, Ahmed, Blazing Saddles, well worth the watch, but be aware. And that's something very much context is king there. And if you are, you know what, I'll see, there's a great video on talking about the context of Blazing Saddles and why how did the commentator is basically saying it doesn't need to. Of course you wouldn't make it. Of course you couldn't make it now. You don't need to. It did its job in the early 70s. And it was just a hilarious and very insightful commentary about how that movie basically finished family-friendly Westerns. So went after every racist and sexist trope that you just couldn't make family-friendly Westerns anymore. You know, it's just like, how could you? You know, they just so effectively torn apart. It's not that you couldn't make Blazing Saddles now. It's, no, Mel Brooks already did the job.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to this, Walter. I think absolutely, and I don't think it's not so much it's not so much judging it, I think. More
sort of an observation.
It's kind of, well, and this is always the risk with looking back. We're not just looking back with nostalgia, we're looking back being very much in the context of our time, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, would you, so I think it's not so much to judge them with 2020 eyes, going, oh, I can't believe. More like, that was early 80s, you know? And honestly, the fact that it was again, their humor was more surreal and absurdist. They weren't, political, or you couldn't even call them racy, really. And I don't even think that was it just wasn't their thing.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't go for they rarely went for the cheap sex joke. But it definitely is of its time. But it's hard to watch these things and kind of go, oh, I did not notice it then. But now it's like, you can't help but. Does that make sense?
Sort of in that same vein, and I'll go off topic for about a minute here. HBO's brought back Perry Mason, starring Matthew Rhys from The Americans.
Oh, yeah.
And they had the second episode last night, and I'm watching it, and I'm quite enjoying it. But boy, you got to wash your eyeballs after watching that, because it's gritty and dirty and nasty, and it's not Raymond Burr in a nice suit. But they've actually got an eye somewhat to casting. So evidently, Matthew Rhys is Perry Mason, and who was his, excuse the phrase, Girl Friday, but the one that sort of helped him out in the 1950s series. It hasn't been revealed yet, but evidently her character is gay. And then there's a cop that he eventually has as a right-hand man, and he was a white character, and now he's a black cop. And not just not just sort of a half white, half black cop. He's definitely a black cop. And it's I don't know enough about the original series, but that's sort of the treatment of it these days, right? So it's interesting to see what people are doing with casting and that kind of thing. But
oh my goodness! Absolutely, Walter.
Would you like some water?
But also, it's like, who was John Candy's character? Count Floyd and Dr. Doug. Thank you very much, Walter. I appreciate that.
Dr. Doug.
We thank you, and we appreciate your participation. It's a tough one. These are the risks of looking back like this. These are, considering that was it in a comedy, when I'm thinking like a lot of 80s comedies would be, I can't even great ones. And I think John Hughes was a brilliant filmmaker, and he did some amazing great story things. There's in awful gender politics, and there's also wonderful gender politics, some things that filmmakers now could bring in. There's stuff where it's problematic, to say the least. And this, it's like, no, it's just silly. It's silly. Going back to Max von Sydow, all the performances I thought were pretty solid. But Was there anyone in particular? Yeah, you're right. Bob and Doug and their charm, Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas and their charm. But was there anyone where you're like, kind of, no, that was kind of standout?
Yes, and I'm just bringing it up now. Angus MacInnes, who's a Canadian actor who played Rosie, the hockey player and the tough
Rosie.
This guy was okay. So back when I was young like teenager, and you're trying to improve your movie watching palette. So I would watch, and CKND, which is now global, they used to show movies all the time. At night, they would have one at either 12, midnight, and then one at 2 in the morning. And they were actually really good. I sort of wonder who the programmer was. But he had pretty good taste, and he played stuff from like Oscar winners to more obscure films to kind of really odd old animated features and things like that. And you would literally, the first thing when I picked up the Saturday newspapers, I'd take a look at what movies were playing. This is back in the age where you would tape everything on VCR. So where was I leading with this? I was leading to
I'm not sure, Jim.
A big point here, but anyway, so there was a lot of movies at our disposal, but I'll come back to it. Angus McFadden, or is that his name? Angus MacInnes, sorry, and he played Rosie. Yes, that's him.
And he was this guy on Star Wars.
He was. Star Wars connection. It gets better.
Oh, really?
It gets better. It gets way better. He was in Space 1999.
Shut up.
So he's got a credit for Star Wars, got a credit for Space 1999. He was also, if you remember, Witness and John Book, Harrison Ford's John. He actually did a couple of things with Harrison Ford.
Really?
Force 10 with Navarone, Force 10 of Navarone, I think. Anyway, which is the sequel with Robert Shaw and Harrison Ford. And he was, so Witness, who chases John Book down to the Amish farm? 3 bad cops: Danny Glover, our guy, and another guy. So he was one of the bad cops and he's got credits
with Kelly McGillis, and
they used his voice apparently in the last Star Wars movie. You know, when they had all the call signs of all the guys coming in. He has a lot of great shots. He's got a lot of the action. Oh, I know. My point that I was leading up to was this. So one of the movies that I really, really liked was Charles Laughton's Hunchback of Notre Dame. So that was an old classic. And I watched it, and because I'm used to the movies that they make these days, where the main character is the hero and gets the girl and does all the action, that's not always how movies were made. That's not how stories were always told. So in Hunchback of Notre Dame,
Rosie LaRose, which
I think it was
John Rosie LaRose. LaRose. Okay, sorry.
So Hunchback of Notre Dame, when I started watching it, he, you think, does he end up with the girl? Because there's a really, he's got the really foxy Roma woman, I guess, like gypsy. Speaking of all that sensitivity, but so he can't possibly end up with her just, because of who he is. And so there's sort of a princeling or something.
I'm missing something here. What movie are you?
Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Oh, Hunchback. Okay.
So the original Hunchback of Notre Dame, it's got Quasimodo comes in on the rope. He rescues the princess. The whole
Esmeralda,
yes.
Yeah.
So he rescues her. Does he end up with her at the end? No. And in this way, this sort of reminds me a little bit of Strange Brew in that Bob and Doug are kind of like the Quasimodo character, because they don't end up with the girl. Obviously, there's a little bit of, the Rick Moranis is sort of flirting with her a bit, or Bob is sort of flirting with her.
a teenager babysits.
Yes,
So
yeah.
I'd kiss you if I didn't just barf.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry about your sweater, eh?
Yeah.
But so
and then he was crying about, oh, my brother and I, we haven't even ever been apart. No.
yes, yeah. They play some music there, and they're like, "Yeah, I totally don't miss those heads." But so that sort of reminds me of that, where you have layers of heroes in the story, where it's not just one. Yeah. Oh, yes, that's who it was. Yeah. Not just one guy, and we're used to that. Having watched all these 70s and 80s movies, where it all focus. It's the one. It's the the Keanu Reeves in The Matrix. It's Gary Cooper in High Noon. It all sort of focuses on the one guy. He's the romantic lead. He's the action lead. But in the past, they had various levels of sort of heroes that were involved with or protagonists, I guess. And that's sort of, so in this case, the Rosie character reminded me of the old prince in those 1930s movies that would come in, save the day, be the muscle, maybe get the girl. He would be the one whose life was put on the line. I guess breathing through empty beer bottles from empty beer bottles or whatever.
Another brilliant moment.
Did anybody in that scene look comfortable acting underwater? They all looked terrified to me.
Well, because they were putting their lives at risk. I don't think wouldn't have been much safety. I'll try and bring up at least the image for those folks in the stream. Oh, there we are. Which I still just think is it's still a hilarious moment.
Oh,
but, yeah. Back to what you're saying about Angus.
What a career! I'm gonna Space 1999. So he was in the season 2. But filmography, he's still working. He's still a working actor. He's been in let's see here, Captain Phillips. He was in Captain Phillips.
Really?
Yeah, and he's often one of those big guys. Not quite the Richard.
I screwed this up.
Not quite the Richard Keel kind of, big, tall, heavy, but he's kind of a large guy anyway. He was in the Black Dahlia, Hellboy. He was in. He looks quite a bit different now.
Oh yeah, because he's older. He's doing bits in that Vikings thing.
Yes. Eyes Wide Shut, Judge Dredd. Anyway, so that
I might have figured out my audio problem too. So,
and he gets a lot of the screen time. He gets a lot of the sort of the hero shots. He gets a lot of the action. I thought it was great, and I sort of have a new appreciation for him.
Well, and I want to I'll play this. Let me play the clip, Jim, and then and this is I think this is one of the more ridiculous. I remember getting a laugh, and even now I still find it funny, even though it's kind of lame. And now it's And listen, tell me. We need to discuss that, Ahmed. Even that CDN, this van is so.
It's got the hockey stickers.
I have no idea how the beer bottles made that work.
I don't know, but they're alive today. But did they look comfortable? No, they look terrified.
Yeah, but this bit is one they can barely see.
Well, it is Lake Ontario. I don't know. You sure?
I'm sorry, I shouldn't find this as funny as I do. And even this.
Fake byway ad or
the Beaver Examiner. Jeez. All right. Enough of that nonsense. All right.
So there's I'll ask you, do any images?
Hey, did everyone actually hear that in the chat this time? Look at this.
Oh yeah. No, that I meant to ask that. Okay, there's about 3 images here. I'm going to ask Rob in a second, but there's about 3 images here that'll.
Oh, definitely Jelly Duck in a Canadian corner. Bob and Doug McKenzie. That's a fundamental. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Jim. My apologies.
3 images that are going to stay with me, I think. One is Max von Sydow dressed up as Doug McKenzie. That's him. Max von Sydow, I'm pretty sure, is like 6'8", and Dave Thomas is probably 5'10".
Yeah.
So that's that's unrealistic. But anyway, so the image of him wearing this hoser's outfit, great, just indelible. I had forgotten that. And there's a couple other images. One of which is when they
right. Yes, when they're okay. Yeah, I'll find it. You continue.
Sure. The other one is when they come home at the end. They look through the keyhole of their parents' bedroom and they see their parents, going at it after having too many beers, and it's actually Bob and Doug dressed up as it's Rick and Dave dressed up as their parents. Thank you. And
that was
kind of unsettling.
To note, Mel Blanc,
yes,
did, and they forever had Tom and Jerry playing. If there was a cartoon playing, it was Tom and Jerry, and I'm pretty sure Mel Blanc was like he was the voice of Tom and or Jerry. But
yes.
Anyway, sorry, go on.
So that's another one that'll stay with me, and also the van getting airborne with the CN Tower in the back. That was if you're looking for Canadian content, that was a pretty good one too.
Yeah. Here's the so whoops. Let me give it more. Let's just give it all.
That's amazing.
Let's rewind a little.
And for any fan of the music group Stars, that the older man there, I think his name was Henry. That's Torquil Campbell's father.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think though? This is one of the things. Oh, good Lord. I do not have the same level of control. Oh, there we are.
He looks so. He's got this. He fully bought in, man. You have to give it to him.
Absolutely. Oh, poor Ted.
There he goes.
Max Mazzino. It's like, But this is, I think, Jim. This is what I really. All the talent in that movie seemed to be game. Unlike when we were talking about Occupation and there was a couple of good, oh, look at that. Just did Warner Brothers. Oh, Jim didn't have any sound. Or Richard. I'm blaming you on that one, Richard. I don't know. I might probably be screwing this up. Okay. Thought Mel just did Warner Brothers. Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. I should have done more research. I was just so blown away that Mel Blanc was doing was what had done something. But for the again, Jim, you had not just great performers, but everyone was, sorry about this. Everyone seemed to be game.
Yeah.
No one seemed to be phoning it in. Mm-hmm. And for, and not Max von Sydow, I think he still had he had a reputation, a serious actor reputation then, if memory serves. And there he was. He's like, yeah, I just imagine it's his German agents Canada, Toronto, something here.
Just before we went to air, I was doing some research, just a quick couple things I was checking up, and there was this. So it's on the web, so take it with a grain of salt. But the person that wrote this claimed that his son was a big SCTV fan, so he essentially did that, because his son, and he let his son read the script, and he said, okay, it would all have to do with having some similar agent as somebody else, and he had just done that. Victory movie, which I believe was the German
Sylvester Stallone,
playing a Canadian, playing a Canadian soccer goaltender. Yep.
Yeah.
And so he was. I if it's the one that I'm thinking about, there's always there's probably about a million things you can research when you do these that you don't know which way the conversation is going to go. So there's just so much to know. But it's one that I actually saw in the theater. It was Michael Caine, Sylvester Stallone. And they both tried to beat the Germans at soccer and organize an escape
at the same time
via the soccer game. Yeah.
Zany hijinks.
Yes, yeah. Sort of like when Fred Flintstone promises Wilma that he'll take her out to dinner and has to go to the big bowling tournament with the water buffaloes, that kind of thing. So it's just...
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, but yeah, that's half the thing. Is Max von Sydow, who just passed away, by the way, this year, and earlier in March, and I associate obviously Bob and Doug with this movie, and I always associated it with him, and I just sort of him being in court with that weird Colonel Sanders tie, with a picture of Pierre Elliott
right now.
Pierre Elliott Trudeau right behind him, who was the prime minister at the time, and Queen Elizabeth, who's still our sovereign, of course, and that was kind of a
high school, back in high school, the picture, and that looked that vintage,
Yes, yeah.
What am I looking up here again? Something about Max.
Oh, just Max von Sydow at court there.
Oh, right. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, I know. Colonel Sanders tie. That's what I'm looking up.
So Angus MacInnes was the gold leader in Star Wars, and he dies. He's got a whole backstory. His name is John Vander. His call sign is Dutch. And he dies on one of the first waves of attacks on the Death Star. So he's one of those guys. I'm sure they've retconned him to death, that he's got some big backstory or what have you. But Kentucky
the
Colonel
Western bow tie.
Oh, okay. The bow tie. Huh? Well, yeah, okay.
Well, the Western bow tie.
Yes,
but it is now thinking about it. I own bow ties. I've tied my own bow ties. Yeah, now that I think about it, it's a bow tie, just thinner and longer. Yeah. It's got tails, but now that actually does make sense.
Yes. Yeah. See, you learn stuff when you're watching this.
What did you? Oh my goodness, the Seventh Seal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Walter's right. That was the thing. Like, for honor. They could have escaped and they stayed to finish the game. And I agree with Walter. That's just dumb. Maybe we should look at that movie and then talk about how stupid these choices are. What did you think? Here, let me just, I want to throw up another banner. Because there was, again, there were a lot of great, just everyone it looked like they were having fun delivering, and no one phoning it in.
Yeah.
What was one of your, and just one of my favorite lines, and it looked like they were forever delivering good lines. Everyone got comedy lines if they wanted it, kind of thing. One of my favorite parts there, everything's starting to fall apart for the villains. And one of the things is Rosie finally escapes the mental institution, gets to the brewery in a stolen car that I could have sworn was a Hyundai. It looked like a Hyundai Pony.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But in one of my favorite bits, the lieutenant, the hard and really super hard boiled, almost like a Columbo meets a hard boiled detective type, the detective.
And we don't really meet him until the last sort of 40 minutes.
Yeah. The last act. Yeah, he's definitely a last act guy. He's like and he says to one of the other cops, very typical kind of cop talk at a crime scene, one of the uniforms, and he's like, the whole world is made in Japan. The other guy, could be, sir. That just stuck to me. There's just these weird little one-offs, Would you like some more bean medley? Could be, sir. And it's just the way the guy delivers it in that could be, sir. Like, that's what he says. It doesn't matter what crazy crap comes out of the lieutenant's mouth. It's could be, sir.
Yeah.
Which was also the fear of the time. The 80s was obsessed with 80s into the 90s, obsessed with how Japan was going to take over.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point. Well, there's also a line that the Henry character delivers about the first half an hour in. I think he's showing, if I'm not mistaken, he's showing Pam around the plant, and he says, "Welcome," or maybe he's introducing Bob and Doug to their new jobs, and he says, "Welcome to 1984. It's the age of automation," and then Pam brings them into the cafeteria.
End of the human era.
Yes,
that's what he says. The end of the human era. I wrote it down.
Big statements for a movie like this, and then Pam takes the boys into the cafeteria and says, "Well, I guess if you don't have any staff, you don't need a cafeteria."
Because they've all been gotten rid of. I almost had that in the overview, and I'm like, you know what? Watch the goddamn movie. But there I would say that was one of those, we're just going to run with funny. It was almost, I'm wondering if they put that in there just to explain why there's no one in this building. In part, it allows the villain to do his villainous things without having to worry, because they built a skating rink in there. They have, but also you don't have to worry about as many extras.
Yeah.
You have your hockey, your evil hockey team thing going on, or your mind-controlled evil hockey team going on.
Have you seen?
But you don't have to worry about the plant being busy.
Have you ever seen the silent movie Metropolis before?
Yes.
They show it all the time. There's a scene with about 100 children extras in a sort of a flooded chamber in water. Holy cow. And the whole time I thought, did they have the same kind of, did they have to sign a liability waiver, or,
That was the 20s. They went to the orphanage. I'd like to sign out I don't know, how many kids you got here? That should be enough.
I know,
take them all for the day.
Berlin was pretty loose back then, but
feed them briefly.
Gather up all the flappers and their children. But anyway,
and filled the pool with Wasser. Mit Wasser.
We're gonna get a letter from the German consulate. But hey, Katie. Katie just chimed in there.
That dog did bring its game.
Yeah, that was sort of a late sort of thing too. Like, all of a sudden it's got these
set up at the beginning.
Was it? Okay.
Set up at the beginning, or at least the dog was. Its superpowers, no.
Yeah.
But I think that went more to the absurd nature of they needed a Deus Ex Machina.
I should mention too, I watched
That's an interesting point, Ahmed.
So as we discussed last week, there's an there's a version of Strange Brew with Italian subtitles.
Yeah.
English voices, but Italian subtitles. So Hoser in Italian, in case you were wondering, is Babeo, and Hosehead, which was the dog's name, was Testa di Babeo. just in case it ever comes up.
You never know. And I'm kind of interested in, did they transliterate it, or did they pick something similar in
I actually
Italian?
Looked it up,
because that's got to be that's a difficult thing,
I looked it up, and in Italian sucker, it means sucker, but schlub or something like that kind of.
So they translated, not transliterated. Gotcha.
According to The Second City by Donna McCrohan, Hoser was invented by them. They invented the term. Oh, and that's the other thing I wanted to bring up.
Oh.
There's two things that they mention here. They're after the hockey game, they get back to the locker room and they go into their lockers to get their clothes. He goes, "Hey, holy geez, someone horked our clothes, eh?" And so I don't know that I don't know that I know that, hork, I think, is of spitting, but hork meaning stolen as well. I don't know if that made it to Winnipeg or not. But then when Bob McKenzie is trapped in the beer vat with Pam Elsinore, and they're filling it up and presumably going to drown them, he goes, "Holy jeez, I'm cold and I got a couple of soakers here, eh?" This is the hork and the soakers, and I mean, a linguist would sort of probably have a field day with it. I mean, there's probably things we're missing too that we just take for granted, but those were sort of the two other standouts for me.
Yeah, I think why am I? Where's the salt? Veruca salt, and I was starting to think, like, I mean, obviously it is a loose, let's say, inspired by Hamlet. But I really did. Like they did, like, I mean, when he drinks all the beer in the vat, and all I can think of is, and I think in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, it was Veruca Salt, where she kind of puffed up because she ate the blueberry or whatever the heck it was.
Yes,
like, because the kids be kids and
well, the
corporate candy plant owners be candy plant owners.
Well, speaking of,
child dies and is punished for it.
Speaking of that, that kind of, the echoes of other movies, one thing that I was surprised with was how well, first of all, if you take a look at the original movie poster, it's actually kind of a neat poster, but how good did the hockey playing armies look? Like I wasn't like, it looked kind of cool. Actually, they had that clanky sound that they think the Foley artists added afterwards. But the black versus the white, I'm not sure they had the rules down, but I thought they looked pretty good. And then when both Bob and Doug took off their helmets, and they just had that sort of their gear, and specifically Bob
wandering
with the white
around in the
turtleneck.
Death Star.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They sort of look, and even Dave Thomas, he's hanging off the forklift, and he goes coo 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 coo, and he's like, and it's a kind of a cool moment. Like he sort of owns the moment, and he's all in black. And I thought that actually, and that's probably when you're writing your own movie. These two guys are both credited as the directors, by the way. When you're doing your own movie, it's like, what situations could I get in that would make me look good, cool? But I thought it looked pretty neat.
I think, like, I mean, some of the Star Wars stuff, like, I mean, for me, it verged on, at times, it's like, really? Like, verged on it, a little cringy at times. More that kind of, sometimes when you idolize, like, you're such fans of their work, you want everything they do. After a while, and memory and history and all that stuff is playing tricks on you. You want everything to be wonderful because you just don't want to think, kind of like, back to that apprehension before watching the movie. That said, they didn't really, it wasn't a parody of Star Wars.
No.
It was not and so when they did have those moments, I think they were earned, and they set them up in small before they went for the big heavy stormtrooper thing. They had the bully buddy's ear. Like, I mean, they had these little moments. But another one, and this is again, like, I mean, a ton of weird little, not even shout outs, more like, did later movies get that from this? And like, first of all I could think of was the Superman soundtrack when Hosehead was flying through the sky, like very Superman-esque. But was there any other movies, like later movies, like, because I think the Superman was more the other way around. Look at forced Star Wars. That's an interesting point. That's an interesting point, Walter. One, we should come back to it. Tia, I'm not following that. Jamie, I'm feeling a little stupid. You'll have to explain that to us. But here, I'm going to see if I can't find this, the moment I'm talking about. But for me, like, what other movies did this movie remind you of?
Well, just it definitely had the
Entertain our crowd, Tia Maria.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. Now, well, thank you very much. All right. Anyway, sorry, Jim.
It just had sort of a an 80s comedy feel where at times some of these 80s comedies feel a little set piecey, a little perhaps a little thin. That's why the performers are so important, because had it been anybody other than them, it might not come across as the same thing. And also sort of, I mean, my big fear is that I'd watch this and be kind of stone-faced and not find it, anything funny. But like almost immediately I was in, and it's largely because of the spirit of these two guys is so strong, and they're both so committed. But and even though they got tired of it at the end, and they ultimately sort of agreed with kind of what a silly, there were stupid characters, and I think it's kind of exhausting playing characters that are not all that smart, and they sort of allude to that. But they've since come around well, and they appreciate it now. I think Dave Thomas puts it almost in a Bob Hope like way, like bought us a house, and that kind of thing. And by the way, according to The Second City, it says here, the movie won Canada's Golden Reel Award as the highest grossing theatrical film of 1983. I don't know that
did not know we had a Golden Reel.
No, I would need to sort of look further into that, but yeah. So yeah.
Okay. First of all, Jelly Duck. Yeah, you're right. Like in a lot of ways, you can see interviews where even they talk about the time where there are sort of on one level, they were almost like the comic kind of, they had a bit of that reputation, and Saturday Night Live members kind of played with that, while at the same time basically kind of going, yeah, you're doing pretty good on your little show there. So there was some of that kind of, weird, I can't say tension, but there was I always thought it was like Canadian Saturday Night Live in a lot of respects, like at least as far as the sketch comedies go.
Well, and there's a couple things here is that if you're sort of looking at these sketch comedy shows, you would probably put, I think, SCTV in between Monty Python on one hand, which was really sort of smart and absurd and just really they sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, well, I'll just stick with absurd. So, and then you had Saturday Night Live, which was sort of generally kind of quicker, a little heavier on the catchphrases and things like that. And so I would put them right in the middle. Like they at the same, it was super smart. Like they had really smart. They were pretty ambitious in their storytelling. They had one episode that was totally devoted to like a Soviet takeover. They had one that was a CCCP. That one they kept on Soviet television. And then they did a Godfather thing, like it was the war between the networks. And Guy Caballero says, "Ha ha ha! It'll take more than 17 bullets to stop Guy Caballero." Then he takes a drink of water, and the water comes out of 17 different places in his body. I mean, smart. I'm putting quotes around smart. I mean, goofy, but they often did a lot of really interesting things that would maybe not catch everyone. They have a fake game show. You can find all these on YouTube. They have a fake game show called from the 50s called "What's My Shoe Size?" And one of the panelists one day was Joe Flaherty playing Kirk Douglas. And, it's supposed to be all convivial and fun, but Kirk Douglas was notoriously intense. So he said, and he's reading a line obviously off a cue card. And he goes, "If I said the host was a friend of mine, I'd be lying." he sort of doesn't get the game, and
the TV steeplechase with
yeah.
ding-dongs answering really hard questions, but actually answering them. Like, they had all kinds of brilliant. But I think, I like the way you put it. Myself, though, I think one of the reasons this holds up. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, Walter. I think one of the reasons, though, this does hold up, this show holds up, this movie holds up, is there's enough absurdist nonsense that is timeless. Oh, it's a kind of a flowery, overused adjective. It's timeless. Yeah. But it does. You don't necessarily have to have a whole bunch of pop culture context explained to you, and because it's so absurd, you don't get into those pitfalls of, well, everyone thought that was okay to joke about then. It's like, a lot of it's like, well, ding dongs are funny, and they're sweet and all that. And Walter, I'm now gonna have to, after the show, I'll have to look that up. Jim, we're in an hour and 36 on this. We are
longer than the movie.
We've finally done a movie where we're longer than the movie. Any other thoughts you had on the show before we wrap it up? We'll let these people go. These are our loyal viewers.
I think Walter.
We got to tell them about the next movie too.
Were we talking to Walter? Was I talking to him last week, online or off? But basically, the whole challenge of taking a skit from a sketch comedy show and then bringing it into an 88-minute or 90 movie, that's a challenge, and it's not always successful, and it's not always sort of super satisfying, if you're gonna rank it in the movies that you like. But I think occasionally they do. I mean, it holds up for me. I can't speak for other generations, but I'm not exactly partial with this one. And it was kind of interesting to see it all come together and see the characters get a little bit fleshed out. Evidently, Doug McKenzie's got some electronic skills, which we didn't know before. I think
a genius.
It's like your four tires are grounding you. Hey, if you step out, you'll be electrocuted. But so there's always a challenge with something like that. But I think they sort of overcame it. I mean, not everything was perfect. Not every joke landed. There was a few that were just sort of clattered onto the floor. Yeah. But that's comedy, right?
Clunkers. Yeah, absolutely.
You can't be afraid to fail. If you did, you wouldn't say anything. So,
and I think that's really tough with absurdist humor. Mm-hmm. Like, it's really, you don't have that live, especially things like what these guys. You don't have a live audience. You're not. Hey, how can I relate to you? That it takes a certain level of performer guts to go, no, I really think this will be funny. I am going back to what you're saying about what they were saying about these characters, and you're absolutely right. They're not that bright. Looking at them now, again, kind of magical that they found a nice point, which would otherwise, because they don't flirt with it, but they come close to that line of, are you making fun of these ding dongs? Are you, punching down?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they don't. Part of it is you're right. Their charm and their innocence and their, that they even their desires are really so basic. It's really hard to, they're more like, and when I say simpleton, I mean it in a fairy tale sense, the simpleton hero that almost always, it works out for the simpleton hero. They're very much are making fun of the sophisticate or the people too smart for their own good.
Would you say it's almost like the Ashlad situation that we, the Norwegian movie that we watched for?
You know what? Yeah, they are. They're that kind of stock character. Mm-hmm. But I am glad they didn't take it too far. I am glad they didn't Garfield it, let's say. Yeah. Or even, I'm thinking that they didn't, and this is not a knock on, I'm thinking Bloom County. This is not a knock on Berkeley Breath at all. But that they didn't, you know what, we'll monetize this and we'll do that. And that'll be the show, because in an American context, if they had that, all of a sudden the show's about them. You know, they didn't. They kept, that show kept doing what it did. They didn't turn their whole career over to it. And I think that's half the reason they have long careers. Does that, are you buying any of that?
Yeah. I mean, it should be noted that Rick Moranis sort of pulled the plug on his own career after his wife passed away many years ago. He's about to come back actually and do his first role in a long time. He didn't even voice Bob in the animated series that ran about 15 years ago. It was I think Dave Coulier from one of those sitcoms. What's the crowd? No, what's the one with Bob Saget, the twins and everything? Anyway, so he was in that.
Fuller House.
Full House. Yeah, sorry, I didn't never watch the show.
Was he in Full House? Was he in Full House?
Coulier, yeah, I think.
Oh, Dave Coulier. Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm thinking of.
No, he just did he just did the Bob McKenzie's voice there, and then Dave Thomas did Doug's for the cartoon. But I didn't really pay attention to that either.
What is, Jim? I'm trying to remember. It wasn't Bone Tomahawk.
No, Badlands.
What's it? Badlands?
Yeah, with Bruce Dern.
On Netflix, correct?
On Netflix, yeah.
Okay, good. Well, there you go, folks. We just announced next week's movie, Badlands. I will put something. I just didn't. Hey, listen,
Canada.
You can't have everything already. Well, I guess
you need two more hands. You need to be like Dr. Octopus. You need to be like Dr. Octopus and have these kind of things coming.
The Doc Ock of YouTube. I'm not doing villainy. I'm doing live streaming.
My Canada Day shirt. So happy Canada Day, everyone. The camera adds 75 pounds.
That's right. Just a couple of days, and we're in Canada Day, a lockdown Canada Day. All the virtual celebrations. Okay, so for me, final verdict. It does hold up. It has there's some little noteworthy kind of, wow, there aren't any colored people here. Colored people of color, no Indigenous people, which is like kind of, oh, well, that's certainly of its time. But otherwise, yeah, it held up. Like at no time are you going, oh, I can't believe I liked that. Yeah, no. Fully not partial, but I'm very, very much. You're not impartial.
Not impartial, but yeah, it held up for me. Whether or not it would hold up for my kids, I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, it was. I'm glad to have watched it again. It was kind of fun, a good Canada Day exercise, and I learned some Italian too.
Nope. That is awesome. All right. Well, listen, we do have some outtakes from earlier preparation for this very special episode of Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies. We agree it does hold up. And we're going to say, Jim, I'm hoping you'll stick around for a bit so we can talk about next week, the week after.
I got to get a beer.
As we slowly but surely get our you-know-what together. But anyway, everybody, thank you all. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Walter, very much. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Kaiser886. Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you. Oh, God, am I missing anyone? Richard, Walter.
Rob?
Richard, Walter. Say that again?
It was Robin. Oh, he had Rob Busick.
Rob Busick wasn't in. Oh, and you know what? Here's a special shout out to somebody who, yes, she has children in a, let's say that it's probably, what is it? A quarter after 11 here. I think in Atlanta, it's probably 1 a.m. and she's got small grandchildren. So yeah, she's not watching, but a supporter of our show, a watcher of our show, and sometimes gets in early on the live show. Shelley, it was her birthday the other day, so I just want to say
happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Shelley, from us, and hope everything's going well in Atlanta. I hope all is safe with you and yours. And we're gonna say goodnight now, and I hope you enjoy our new our outtakes as we prepared for this. So
happy Canada Day, all.
So take off to the Google .ca, not that .com one, the Canadian one, the Canadian Google. I don't know what that would be, but beauty. You like my toque? It's beauty. Beauty. It's beauty. All right, there'll be something in there.